I had a real estate agent call me this morning at 6:45 to help her with a problem on a job I did 2 weeks ago. And there are a lot of guys who don't pick up the phone to answer that problem. So whenever she's thinking about who to use next, is she going to use the guy who helped her with the problem or not? Right. So to everybody answer the telephone. And then two, again, like she had a problem that I could solve. And so I solved it, and it cost me, 5-7 minutes of my time, but I'm probably going to get her business again.
Yep. Welcome back to the Regenard Report. You're a special guest today, Nick Brugal. Probably butchered that, and I'm supposed to roll my R's when I say your last name, but I can't do that. Welcome to the podcast, Nick. I'm excited to have you on. Give a different perspective on the journey of building a business and also transitioning. You have an extensive background from powerlifting to being law enforcement. It's now being an entrepreneur with a successful business down here in Southwest Florida. So I'm excited to kind of go through that journey.
Yeah, so kind of twists and turns. I think that's something important since we are talking about entrepreneurs. If you talk about, what do you want to talk about? The iPhone,
Right.
If you talk about Steve Jobs, it's all about the pivot, right?
Right.
And so, I don't try to get too married to one idea. But, when I first started out, I was actually a really, top level wrestler. So in high school, I was like sixth in the nation. And
Okay.
so I wrestled in college. And when I started wrestling in college, obviously weightlifting was a big part of my life.
Right.
And I sort of felt I wanted to be a bodybuilder, and I fell into the world's strongest man competitions.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I had a guy come in. I was working at a GNC part time. He came in and he said, "Hey, this is what I do. I really enjoy it. You should come out and try it." Fell in love with it, and quickly became one of I think the second youngest American to turn pro in the world's strongest man.
Wow. And this is like 10 plus years ago now?
Oh, this is a while. I mean, unfortunately, this is 20 plus years ago.
20, all right.
Yeah, so I turned pro when I was 19.
Well, you're still jacked and looking good, so he's the first guest on here to really make me look like a small little guy.
The youngest guy to turn pro was 18.
Okay.
I was 19 when I turned pro. And
that's huge. Can we talk about that? What it took from the mindset of a 19-year-old individual to go pro, right? Like, most people, they're in their 20s, 30s, or whatever. They're trying. Like, what did you do?
Sure.
At the age of 19 to become pro?
So I think that it's, as we tie it in, I think it's really important for anybody who's got that entrepreneur mindset. I think weightlifting and the idea of health and nutrition is really important to the success. Right, it does develop the mind. It's a practice and a habit of developing a strong mindset. Right, so and I'll jump into what I did, but most people, the dedication that it takes to develop a good physique means that you have to sacrifice your time to go to the gym. Right, you have to push past your limits, which are things that people don't want to do in order to develop a physique, because you could go in and you can just lift until like I did 4 or 5 reps, or you can push past fatigue, which is what we do as entrepreneurs.
Getting uncomfortable, right?
Uncomfortable. The growth zone, Muhammad Ali said it. A guy asked him, he said, "How many sit-ups did you do?" He said, "I don't know. I only count them when they hurt." And realistically, that's getting in that pain zone, right? Like the easy stuff, we don't count. It's the hard stuff.
Right.
And then the diet. Diet's the hardest part, right?
Right.
Who doesn't love eating cake and sweets and everything else? But the willingness to say no, the willingness to eat the things we're supposed to do, the willingness to do those things. If you train your body and your mind in the physique area, you really can transfer it over to everything else. And I found that it's helped me so much. But anyway, what I did.
But that's so critical. And like, if you look at most CEOs, business leaders, entrepreneurs, most of them are in pretty good shape. Like it takes a lot to maintain that physique wise, physically, as well as it does, emotionally and intellectually here with a business too. So
it's really interesting. If you look back at most of the philosophers, right? Most of the ancient philosophers, they all said that there was a connection between the physical body and the mind. If you don't train the physical body, then you're not going to be able to train the mind, and vice versa. And I can't remember which one it was. I want to say it was Plato. But he was an Olympic champion in a form of grappling.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is true. Your mind is a muscle, right? Even though people don't think so, right? They don't train it like that. They don't think it's a muscle. It's not our bicep, our legs, or whatever, right? But it's full blown a muscle.
I was having a great conversation yesterday with a guy who told me that his son was doing really bad in high school.
Okay.
He went to prep school between high school and college. And what he took away from prep school was he learned how to learn, right? And just like a muscle, right? We can go and we can lift incorrectly and we can get medium results, or we can learn to lift correctly and we can get outstanding results.
Right.
Same thing with our mind, right? We have to learn how to learn, like any other muscle. We have to learn, and again, like everybody else, it's individual.
Right.
Some of us learn, through audio, through visual,
Right.
touch.
Yep. And so you persevered. Obviously, you were dedicated, but I mean, you had to let's talk about the mindset that it did take to go pro at 19.
Sure. So
what it was a day like? You know what I mean? Because sometimes we're all like, yeah, I have the mindset, but when it comes down to it, they don't act on that mind. They don't actually fulfill it. They don't actually do it. They say it, right? It sounds good to them. They please themselves, but they don't actually perform the action.
yeah, and so it's funny. I always say, everybody says they want to be a millionaire, but what have they done to become a millionaire? 10 and 12,000 calories a day. So that was a lot of eating, and a lot of eating that I didn't want to do. And so, I was eating every 2 hours. I was eating rice, chicken, steak, baked potatoes, tons of baked potatoes, weight gainers, protein shakes, fish, eggs. I was eating probably 24 eggs a day. And so,
Oh my gosh.
I'd go to my college classes and I'd pop open the food and I'd be eating, and the instructor, the professor would yell at me and tell me I couldn't, and I would have to just tell him like, hey, I am, and I'm sorry, but you had to be uncomfortable with kind of setting your goals in front of everything else.
Right.
So I would train probably 2 to 3 hours a day, every single day. I had a routine split between the gym and doing strongman implements. A big thing again that I think comes.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. And the reason, and I don't like to interrupt, but people need to realize what you just said. You were eating 24 eggs, you're eating 10 to 12,000 calories. Like most people I've talked to, because I enjoy working out and I talk to people and they want to grow, they want to build muscle mass. So they think eating 3,500, 4,000 calories is good. They ate 3 eggs this morning, 4 eggs, 5 eggs, whatever. Like, use this understanding of how much you did. 24 eggs a day, 10 to 12,000 calories, eating every 2 hours. Like, most people look at it like, oh, I want to bulk up, I want to grow. And they only do a very small fraction of what you did. So you can use that from a physical standpoint. You can use it mentally or in business. But that's a huge thing that people realize is you can do more.
Yeah,
right?
There's always more to do.
There's always more, right?
Unfortunately,
you're right.
There's always more to do.
So people need to realize that right there.
Yeah. And so a few things as we're talking, they're kind of popping in my head. One thing that was really key for me was I sought out a good training group.
Yeah.
A good group of guys who wanted to train. And I built my own air quotes gym. I bought I rented a 24 by 24 storage locker. And I built a gym out of it, and then kind of charged like a small fee for everybody, to train so that I could maintain it because I was broke. And
from all the food.
well, no, seriously.
Yeah.
It's the cost of all,
Trust
right?
me, I know. Yeah.
So I slept on a lot of people's couches.
Yeah.
Right? I never slept in my car, but I lived out of a lot of people's couches. I lived in, like, at that time, like Airbnb and shared rentals weren't a thing. So I lived in some sketchy shared rentals, just to get by.
Yeah.
I lived in an apartment that was really disgusting, right next to a train track. And everyone says you get used to it, but you never do. And I lived like right next to the tracks. And every time it came by, it was by a road, so it always sounded the horn. It was terrible. But again, I mean, these are the sacrifices we make. I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. But one note that I wanted to touch on was with the group of guys, we had one rule, and that rule was brutal honesty. I noticed really quick that I was holding back some of my observations or what I saw guys were doing wrong, because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, right? Like when we were doing the implementations, when we were doing the lifts, and so we created a rule that was whatever is said has to be accepted, right? So there was harsh, uncomfortable criticism every single day. And it hurt, right? Like you would think that you just did a great job, And the guy would tell you like, hey man, you stutter stepped on the first time, your time was a second slower, and I really think that you're just not putting forth this, and this. And instead of shaking it off and making excuses, we really just all accepted it. And in the group, 3 of us rose, one to professional and the other 2 guys to high ranked in the national level.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how is that brutal honesty that you learned in that group? How do you apply that to current, business, life, all that stuff?
Well, to life, self-evaluation. I think if we really look at ourselves, it's so easy to make excuses, right? Because we don't like, nobody likes not being perfect, and nobody likes thinking that they're not as good. And I think that's the wrong way of thinking about stuff. You want to take everything from sort of a stoic perspective, take the emotion out of it, look at it for what it is, and evaluate it. If I'm being honest, I haven't been able to apply it to business the way that I would like. I just recently joined a business group.
Okay, cool.
Where we kind of like for home inspectors, where we evaluate each other and give evaluation. But I haven't had that group to really hold me fully accountable, which would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've done men's groups, I've done coaching, I do different things like that. And, I just got to say, like, if you're not involved, and you're not putting yourself in a situation with other people at the same caliber or higher, you're letting yourself down, right? You're not maximizing that potential.
Yeah. So I just joined a group, and it's funny. I'm at a point of growth in my business, and I realized that I'm just sort of, I'm not at that next level. So I called a friend of mine who's got a home inspection firm with like 23 guys. They've got a multi-million-dollar building, they've got like CEOs and marketing managers, and they have all these things, right? And so I called him up and I said, hey, can I pay you to coach me? And he said, well, we're actually part of a mentorship group, and you should join it, right? And I want to say it's like somewhere between, and I don't know the exact price, $400 or $600 a month. And for a lot of people starting off, that can seem like a lot of money. And I kind of thought that it was, and I got to say that like the immediate takeaway has been super noticeable. It's worth to me every dollar. And if you're not really willing to invest in yourself, then what's the point of doing any of this?
Right. Right. Because who's driving the ship?
Who's driving the ship? I mean, again, getting back to that brutal honesty, we all think that we have these skills, and then if we look inward and are really honest, I think we can really pick out a lot of the places that we're lacking.
Yeah.
And it's really good, a good exercise to identify what you are lacking and then just be honest about it. I'm really big in looking to other people for direction. I really like Patrick Bet-David, and one of the things that he talks about is if you make a list of what you want and you put it out in the world, people will take it and bring it back to you. And his example was he wanted to get married, right? So do you go out and say, I want to get married, do you know any women? Or do you make a list and say, he's Iranian, hey, I'm looking for a woman who shares the same religion as me, who's Iranian, who has these political beliefs, who enjoys cooking and children, who would probably want, you give a list. And when you make specific lists and you put them out into the world, people will help. And a good example of that is I wanted to replicate how I write reports. That's a very broad term.
Right.
I'd like to replicate how I write reports. And so I drilled that down to specifics. I want to replicate how I write reports. I want them to be user-friendly. I want the person who does it to not have to use any critical thinking. I want it to be as plug and play as possible.
Right.
And I want all the most common defects that I can find to be in the report so that that person can see them as they're inspecting. And I went and I told that to probably 10 people in the industry. And sure enough, I had 2 to 3 people come to me with the potential, and then one of them flushed out.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and when you analyze your list, just like if you are setting goals, different things like that, like you're in a sense speaking into an existence, and you're training your mind to achieve that. You're training your thoughts to say, I can only do, or I only need this with this criteria, however it is, right? There's a lot of different ways, but you know, in that sense, it would be the same as like trying to find and hire the right person, right? Sure. It's like you set the job restrictions, or you set the needs from that individual, and they have to hit all that. So that's powerful. Let's talk about too when you transition. So you're like you kind of got in a tough spot, right? Because your father was in the military, and you were kind of going down that path for a little bit, right? But you ended up you didn't make it, right? Let's talk about that.
Well, I've never, and this is going to sound bad at first, but I've never wanted to be anything. It's so funny, like when you meet somebody and you say, "Hey, we meet somebody. What's the first thing we ask them? What do you do?" Right?
Right.
We tie what everybody, their job with who they are, and I only ever just wanted to do sports. I only just wanted to be a professional weightlifter. I just wanted to lift weights and wrestle, and that's, to be honest, all I ever wanted to do. I never cared. Everything else was secondary. So I went down the professional field. I did really well. I was making good money as in that field. But my dad is a professional, and he was really hounded me and was like, "Hey, you need to get serious. You need to go here and that." And I'll admit that I gave in to that path, and I took a job as a police officer, which was great. I was a team leader of the SWAT team in Memphis, and I came down here to Naples as a team leader down here in the SWAT team, and those parts were enjoyable, but it just wasn't for me, right? Like, it wasn't what I enjoyed. And so again, kind of making a list, I said, what is it that I enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoy the construction industry. I enjoy solving problems. Like, the police work part that I did enjoy was dealing with a complex problem and figuring out how to resolve it. And so, the home inspection field kind of seemed like it was really for me. And so, I made that jump, not all at once. But yeah, I mean, again,
how did you transition from being a police officer? You said it took kind of a couple years in a sense to transition fully to owning and operating your own business. So how was that? Because a lot of people are, listening, they're at that point where they're sitting in a 9-to-5. They're maybe driving around the work truck right now, listening to your speak. And they're like, man, how do I go about executing from me working my 9-to-5 for someone else to becoming an entrepreneur and make sure I don't, let my family down?
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to touch on that. So again, I'm no expert. You take advice from people you want to be like. And so, maybe somebody else has better advice. But for me, I was a cop for 14 years. I have a wife, I have 2 children, and I had a house, a mortgage, cars, notes, all these things. And so the big advice that I hear all the time is you just make that jump. Just make the jump. No second, no backup plan, no anything. Just make the jump. And that just wasn't for me. I felt like I owed my family more than that. That if I failed, then I was failing them. But also, with that being said, grinding out every day in a job that I didn't want to work, I felt like I was failing myself. So I made the commitment to burn the candles at both ends. So I had worked previously in the construction industry. I was a project manager estimator for a large construction company. So I had a really good background. And I when I was in college, I went to school for engineering. So I had a good background in that. And so I took the home inspector's test, got my license, and then sort of like, what next? You know what I mean? And through friends and family, kind of got my name out to a couple of realtors, and they took took a chance on me. And through my, so I was being a cop, and then I was doing these home inspections, which is really good because I think if I had just jumped right into it, a lot of my flaws would have been noticeable. So I was working my full-time job and then doing the home inspection thing as like a side hustle. And then the side hustle kind of grew to more than a side hustle. And then the side hustle grew to a full-blown business. And like I said, I was burning the candle at both ends. I really was working 2 full-time plus jobs, and I was sleeping like 3 hours a day at the most, every single day. And then on the weekends, I was just crashing. But it was good because it set the foundation for me to transition.
You had mentioned that you were able to, in a sense, convince realtors to take a chance on you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's where most entrepreneurs fail. They don't either know how to convince someone. They don't need to ask. They think business will kind of come to them. They get in this situation where they might have the level of knowledge to be able to perform a service, but they don't get the service. They don't get the opportunity to build the service, right? So sometimes they say, well, and Alex Ramosi, different people like that, like they give a lot of great advice, maybe, say I'm going to run a promo, and you do 50% off. And then after 5 clients, you go 60% until you build up your service and your obviously credibility to where you can charge full price. How did you go about getting those first few jobs with realtors?
It's going to sound crazy. When I met people, instead of saying, I'm a police officer, I said, I'm a home inspector. Everyone I met. Hey, how you doing? I'm Nick. Oh, great to meet you. I'm a home inspector. Here's my card. Boom. Hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm Nick. I'm a home inspector. And I handed out cards. I told people I was a home inspector.
You believed in it.
Well,
you were so confident, right?
So I'll be honest. No, I mean, I did have that imposter syndrome, but on the outside, everyone who met me, I was the home inspector, right? I was the man.
So people that are sitting there knowing and hearing your story and being like, I feel like I'm faking it, right?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of are. You're not the top inspection company yet. You're not the X, Y, and Z, the best of the best, right? So it's like you kind of got to fake it until you make it in a sense. But, obviously don't do a bad job. We're not saying like, have the knowledge and be ready to perform at the highest ability, but be confident when you talk to those people, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Again, going back to what I said, put it out in the universe.
Yeah.
If and I'm using home inspector is what I am, right?
Right.
So I go and get my license and I want to get home inspection jobs, but I'm just on the internet competing. Home inspector is a huge industry, right? So if I'm paying money to compete with advertisements, I'm paying a lot of money to get there, right? If I'm calling real estate agents, how many new home inspectors are doing that? I'm not saying you don't do it, but I'm just saying what I did, what worked for me was every person I met, people are referrals are going to be your greatest source of income,
100%.
right? You can close a referral probably 95% of the time. Versus if you get somebody that calls you off of Google, you might only close that, if you're really good, 40, 50%. So, and if you don't know what you're talking about because you're brand new, you're probably not going to close it at all. So, what worked for me, and it wasn't not intentional, was every person I ever met, I told them I was a home inspector. And then whenever their sister, cousin, brother, mother, friend was buying a house, hey, you know what? I met this guy, Nick. He was super cool. He's a home inspector. You should give him a call. And they did. It wasn't fast, but it worked.
So it didn't happen overnight.
No.
What are we talking timeline here?
So for me to get to the point where, and I have my numbers, I should have brought them, but for me to get to a point where I would say like I was doing really, really well was probably 3 years. So I remember.
Can I ask you what you mean by really well? So someone that is struggling to put food on their table,
Yeah.
might be doing really well is different numbers to them compared to someone that has been a CEO and different things and then failed business. They're doing very well or very different, right? So do you mind me asking?
Not at all. So again, keep in mind this is pre-COVID, pre-inflation. So $50,000 to me was doing really well. As a cop, I was making, and this is a cop of 14 years. Sadly, I was making roughly, 60 some odd $1,000. And then with overtime, busted my hump, I was making like in the 70s.
Gotcha.
So I said, okay, if I'm making $50,000, and keep in mind, you got gas, you got some overhead, but it's not too bad, which is why I chose the industry.
Right.
50 grand was money that you could live off of, at the time.
And it's your own.
Yeah.
Like it's your own business. Like that's 50,000 of your own business is very different than when you're making 60,000 salary, right? It's just totally different.
Yeah. And so it's funny because I got to the point where if I was doing, in the beginning, if I was doing 7 inspections a month, man, I thought I was killing it. I was like, man, tell my wife, I got 7 inspections. Oh my God, I did 7 inspections this month. I was starting to feel real, there are times probably now where, 7 inspections could be 2.5 days.
Right.
Right.
It when your business grows, everything changes, right? Your perspective, your quote unquote, I'm busy, all that kind of stuff. I mean, also too, when you grow, you're going to have more money out, more money in, right? It's all relative, right? So it took a couple years for you to get to that point. So if you're a new business owner, it could be in the inspection world, it could be anything, right? Grind it out, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within the first couple of months. It takes time for people to believe in you.
Yes. And on that grind it out, to me, family is really important. And so I think it's really important to point out that you should really discuss it with your significant other. It may be, it's my goal to be, I don't even know that the money is the measurement of success. It's not the goal, right? I think most entrepreneurs are addicted to the results, not necessarily the money.
Correct.
Right? We just have it in us. We're busybodies. And money is a measurement of success. So let's just say it's my goal to be a millionaire. I say millionaire because that's a measurement of success, not because I care about the money.
Correct.
Right? It's not my wife's goal to be a millionaire, as crazy as that may be. It's her goal to be comfortable, and she values free time more. My kids value having a dad more than they value having, a lot of money. Of course, they want, they want new bikes and that kind of stuff. So why I say that is, self-sacrifice is going to be the important thing. You really do need to grind. You really do need to hustle, but you may need to do that between the hours of 11 at night and 3 in the morning. You may have to grind and hustle your sleep away so that you can still give that time back to your family, because they might not have signed up for an absentee dad. And I just think that it's so easy as an entrepreneur to get addicted to the grind that it's so easy to forget our families.
Yeah. And you got to remember your why, right? Like, what is your why, right? And my why is I want to create not only financial freedom, I want to create financial freedom so that I have time.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that. People stop and they get on this grind. They make the next buck, different things like that. They're trying to achieve those levels, which we all love. But like achieving those levels and having no time, what's good of it, right?
They say, the measure of if you're rich, you've got money. If you're wealthy, you've got money and time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful. So, remember that money buys you time, right? And that's the whole key. And that's why, I encourage entrepreneurs, I encourage people, because if you're just going 9 to 5 and you're getting a paycheck, yeah, you can live, but you don't have the freedom. You don't have the time. You don't have the ability. If, your kids really want to go do something, can you really take that day off, right? Or go on that trip you really wanted to, or your kids have been dying to go? Probably not. Right. And so I think that's way more valued to most people. And that's why, I've always encouraged entrepreneurship. I took that leap of faith and holy crap, it was scary. Most people know my story, but you moved down here and literally moved in with my mom in her condo and everything into a little room after selling my home and everything in Washington. And, it's not easy. Like you said, you grind the candle at both ends or burn the wick at both ends and one of those. And you just got to keep going. So Nick, you're at obviously a very comfortable spot now. You built a great reputation in town as one of the top home inspection companies. So you obviously grew it from, in a sense, all right, I've made it. You kind of, I'm making some money. I have 7 inspections per month, right? Honey, I've made it kind of thing. To now, you obviously do 7 in 2 days. You have a team with you. Like, talk about what it takes to scale a business once you get to that profit margin.
Yeah. So I'm in the scaling process now. So I'm a multi-inspector firm, and I've had full-time receptionists, and I've gone back and forth, but I've had those full-time reception. I've had employees. And I now want to make the jump to, I'm I'm based primarily in a 1 hour radius around North Naples. I'd like to make the jump to Cape Coral, North Fort Myers, and into the luxury market of Miami. And so, what I had to do was first figure out what I didn't know, right? And that can be difficult. So I sought out people who were where I wanted to be. And so I got lucky enough to speak with this lady who owns the biggest home inspection firm in Texas. They're a $30 million a year company. They inspect the entire state of Texas. And she was kind enough to really break down a lot of things for me. And I expressed to her my pain point. I think every entrepreneur should figure out where they want to go and what those pain points are. And when you speak to a mentor or somebody who's where you want to be, focus on the pain points. Don't just give broad questions. And what she drilled down to me is that I need an operations manager. So for me now, I'm getting spread too thin. And so what I need now is first, I'm bouncing around. I had to figure out how to.
That's entrepreneurship right now, right? Because we're constantly bouncing around.
Yeah. So the first thing to do was to figure out where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there. And I realized that the first problem was replicating an inspector. How do I replicate an inspector like you replicate a McDonald's burger, right?
Right.
So I did that. Next was, how do I find the inspector like you find people to make the McDonald's burger? Now that I've got those things in place and I can replicate a 5-star inspection over and over and over again, how do I manage the reach over 3 massive areas? And that's spending money and hiring people who are better at something and know more than I do. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes I think we get into this concept of nobody can do it better than me. And I had to really come to the terms that I'm not the guy for that position.
That's huge. That's powerful. Because at the end of the day, also your time is worth an X amount per hour, right? If you're out building relationships, you're growing the business, you can calculate that. And I can guarantee you, as much as people don't want to, they don't believe it, whoever you do hire to take that off your plate and give you that time back, the hourly rate of that employee is still going to be substantially less than what your hourly rate is.
So and I hate to keep regurgitating, and if you check him out, his earlier stuff, not his later stuff, but Patrick Dave is one of my favorites.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
And he said exactly that. And it did so much for me, right? So I came from $0 in my bank account, right? And when you do that, what do? You do everything yourself to save money.
Oh, yeah.
And so he said that, just what you said, that you got to start hiring stuff out, because pretty much everybody around you's time is going to be their time per hour is going to be cheaper than yours, because that's their business, not because they're not worth it. So I was cutting my grass, right? And every time I went to cut my grass, I had a problem with my lawnmower. I had to restring my weed eater. I had to keep it all up. It took me 2 or 3 hours to get it done. And it was taken out of every weekend. And I calculated what it would cost me at my hourly rate to do that. And then I hired a lawn crew to do it for $115 a month. You know what I mean? So that comes out to be 30 some odd dollars per week. And it's like, you're tripping over dollars to get the pennies. You know what I mean? And we have to always keep that concept in mind. We're always thinking about the number going out. Oh man, if I hire this person to work for me at $30 an hour, it's going to cost me X amount plus the employer tax every month. Oh my God! But how much of my time have I bought back, and how much more quality am I going to get when there's one person dedicated to that task? The guy who cuts my grass is 1,000 times better than me, because he does it every single day. My yard looks better, and I got my time back. Just like the person who I'm going to hire to be my operations manager is going to be hopefully 1,000 times better than me, because that's what they specialize in.
So the moral of the story is, find what you're bad at.
Yeah.
Right? Find what you're bad at and figure out how you can hire someone that is perfect at that, or really good, right? Because we always want to strive for perfection, but realistically, no one's going to be perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, right? But find the best person that can perform that job time after time after time, and your business will grow. You will, because you get more time back, which you can focus on the money-making tasks, right?
Yes. And I mean, in talking about entrepreneurship, you get to a point, and every business does, where you have to decide if you're going to expand or contract, right? If you're good at business, you're going to get more business. So you can either raise your prices so that you can contract and stay small but make more money, or you can keep selling that product at the price everybody wants and you do more. When you get to the more phase, right? Take me, for example. I had an assistant. My assistant's gone at the moment. I'm answering the phone. I'm doing the scheduling. I'm answering emails. I'm doing client follow-ups. I'm doing inspections. I'm checking inspection reports. I'm managing inspectors, right? What I once was really good at, which was giving everybody and everything 100%, now I'm giving everybody and everything a lot less than 100%. So the quality of the product drops, right? Well, now all of a sudden that 5-star quality is going to lower. So I have to put somebody into these positions if I want to maintain that 5-star. If you want to grow, right? Unfortunately, each step costs more money to get to that next step.
That contracting and expanding kind of part of the business, right? That is so critical, and it sounds exactly like what we talked about in the very beginning. Fitness, right? You know, in the world of working out, right, there's cutting or bulking, right? And it's like, as you were telling me that, I'm like, that's exactly what pretty much dieting is, right? There's two different things. Are you trying to bulk up as much calories, grow bigger, right? Yeah, you'll put on a little extra fat, right? And then you got to cut, right? You got to calorie deficit and lean out. So, you know, there's a lot of things that relate back to the physical health aspects of it. And it's all mental. And so it's critical.
Yeah, I think everything's mental. I mean, again, like, and you know, right? Owning your own business, it's super rewarding. But if anybody, and unfortunately, maybe people only come on and talk about how awesome it is, right? And,
not on this podcast.
Oh, well, cool. then I'm here for it.
Yeah, exactly. This is the raw and honest truth of how entrepreneurship is and all the struggles that go into it.
It's, you know, I don't know why, but people love, and even if I had a receptionist, I couldn't solve this problem. To give 5-star service, I make myself available. So my phone starts ringing. It's between the hours of 7 and 9, my phone doesn't stop ringing. I'm making my son breakfast. My phone's going like crazy. And, you know, all I want to do is throw my phone against the wall. You know, you get, I'm trying to get my son ready on the day, get him to school, get myself ready, get to jobs, make sure that all the guys are going where they're supposed to be going. And I got my phone's ringing. And I'm thinking to myself, business hours are 9 o'clock. Why are people calling me?
Right.
So again,
don't they have a respect for it, right? Like, exactly.
But it takes mental toughness. As crazy as it sounds, like, oh my God, you have to deal with your phone ringing. Well, yeah, it's mental toughness. Like, every single day, you know that you're going to be overwhelmed for 2 hours, and then you wake up and you do it again. You know, it's a mental toughness that gets you through it. So yeah, it's ups and downs of a business.
And then, you know, people that are maybe doing the 9 to 5 say, oh, must be nice. You know, you get to do a haircut in the middle of the day or something like that. And it's like, but also too, like, mine was started at 7, mine started at 6, whatever. Right. And it's not going to end until 7 or 8 o'clock. Guess what? The haircut place wasn't open at those. The only time I can is in the middle of the day. Right. Like, there's all these, like, it's grass is greener on the other side. Right. But, you know, I think, hopefully, you know, listening to podcasts like this and understand it's very rewarding. It's amazing to be your own, you know, boss and be an entrepreneur. But at the same time, there is, you know, a lot of tough times, you know, and people need to realize that. Now, you've grown a business, and, you know, I want to wrap this up with a really important thing that you strive to succeed, and you do a really good job at it. And your company and your industry, it kind of is a challenging industry. And what I want to talk about is how you deliver the message to a client. Because real estate does a really good job at it too. If you're a top agent, is, you know, saying, hey, in a sense, we have a problem that could blow up this deal, right? And it could be financing, it could be inspection, it could be, you know, insurance, whatever. And they have to handle that situation to the client in a unique way. And you do a good job at it. So what have you learned when you do an inspection and it comes back with all these problems? How do you go about doing it? What's your mindset towards that?
Yeah. So I don't want to give away all my secrets, but you know, the competition jumps in and steals it. But no, real quick, just for people who are listening and do want to become entrepreneurs, I learned people management through being a police officer. And as I stated before, I liked the job, but it wasn't where my heart was. But the skill that I learned at being a police officer, the skill of people management, is almost 100% of my success now. And so I say that to say that even if you're in a job that you hate, figure out what you can take away from that job and what's going to make you better in what you really want. And so what I learned really was dealing with people every single day. I would walk into a home, right? And let's just say it's a domestic situation, a husband and a wife, or a son and a mom, and whatever the case may be, and there's no legal recourse, right? Where I can't arrest anybody, but I've got to leave these people at home together, and they don't like each other, and they've got a problem. How do I resolve it and make both people happy? How do I become a mediator, right? Really, I mean, that's what you are. You're an adult babysitter. Well,
and you're de-escalating the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to real estate transactions, everybody involved except for me is emotional. The buyer's agent's emotional because of their commission. The seller's agent is emotional because of their commission. The buyer is emotional because they don't want to get screwed out of money. They don't want to make a bad decision. And lastly, if they're there at the property, the seller's emotional because they stand to make a bunch of money, hopefully. So everybody's coming at me with a lot of emotions, and I'm the guy telling them what all the problems are, right? And so, what I do is a lot of home inspectors, and I don't know why, it is an industry problem. They love to be an alarmist. They love to come in and tell you that they found all these problems. They're so amazing because of the problems they found, and if they don't all get fixed, then your whole family's going to die, right? The story that I heard was a guy told a woman that the garage door wasn't fire rated, and because of that, if carbon monoxide came through the garage door, that her kids would die in their sleep. And it's insane. And I think it's all in the delivery, right? So what I try to do is, again, everybody's understanding of risk is different, right? I'm a licensed contractor and a licensed roofer. So if I go to buy a house that has a roof problem and maybe a structural problem, it's probably not going to be a big deal to me. Where, let's just say, a woman who's 23 years old is buying her first house on her own, and she's a single mom and she shouldn't have any extra money. Like that's a problem, right?
Right, because you can't fix those problems.
Yeah. So let's use her for an example. If I find a roof leak and the whole roof is good and the roof is only 5 or 6 years old,
right,
so it's not like an end of life kind of deal, and I find a leak, and I know because of being in the industry that it's going to cost probably $1,500 to get the roof fixed, and it could be perfect for the next foreseeable 17 years. Do I go to her and go, ma'am, this roof's got a leak in it, and you're about to buy a lemon, and you'll be chasing this problem forever, and if you fix that, who knows what could happen next.
Your room's going to flood. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, oh my God.
And there could be mold, and there could be this. And do I terrify her, or do I inform her in a very neutral, calm sense and tell her, like, hey, listen, there is a roof leak. You need to evaluate what that means to you. That roof leak could be fixed probably for anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, right? Most companies, reputable companies, not a guy working out of his truck, will probably provide you a 1 or 2 year warranty so you can know that it's safe. And then talk to her what that means for her.
Right.
And that ability to deliver a calm, neutral understanding, I think, is what most people value. It's been really beneficial to me. I don't know how that could have translated to somebody else as an entrepreneur, but for me, it's been everything. Because if I'm the guy in the middle of all these emotional people and I'm calm and rational, it just really seems to be the sort of the key to my success.
And what you're saying at the end of the day, you're not bringing them problems, you're bringing them solutions. You're discovering the problem, but you're also giving them the solution. And like when you're hiring different things and people, like that's a huge thing. Like that's a huge thing. It's like even within my business, it's like I don't want the problems, I want the solutions, right? And it's the same thing you're doing. It's like, hey, we're all trying to get to this finish line, aka we're trying to close on this house, right? The seller wants to sell it, the buyer wants to buy it, cool, and everyone wants to get paid. Okay, well, there is some problems, right? But here are the solutions to them. And that's huge. That is so critical on what you're doing for everyone involved. And you're right. There's a lot of people out there in the industry that are like, here's the problem. All right, my job's done. Send me, here's my invoice. Pay it. I'm out. See ya. On to the next. It's like, no, it's not good.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Again, I mean, I had a real estate agent call me this morning at 6:45 to help her with a problem on a job I did 2 weeks ago. And there are a lot of guys who don't pick up the phone to answer that problem. So one, whenever she's thinking about who to use next, is she going to use the guy who helped her with the problem or not?
Right.
So to everybody, answer the telephone.
It's a basic thing. Just pick up the phone.
You'd be surprised how that
Right.
alone will make you successful in the industry.
Weird, yeah.
And then two, again, like she had a problem that I could solve, and so I solved it. And it cost me 5-7 minutes of my time, but I'm probably going to get her business again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so critical. Nick, man, we've dropped some knowledge bombs today, and your journey over your life so far has been remarkable. Obviously it hasn't been easy. We talked about that, today, and in different facets of what part of life you were in, or what industry or what profession or different things like that. Obviously it comes down to is you're willing to put in the work, right? And you're willing to persevere past the hardship, the uncomfortable phase, to be successful. So I think a lot of people, if they're able to listen to this, will take some really good nuggets. Hopefully you motivated someone to, maybe leave that 9 to 5 and progress into an entrepreneurship of their own. So we are at a time, but I just want to say I really appreciate you spending the time. I know you're busy coming in here and joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So this is the Regenhard Report. We're here at Venture X, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you guys need to reach out to Nick, all his information will be below. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.